And we're back from break. Well, it was an honor to have Cassandra come here. And like I said, Heidi, I mean, we all in this room, including present company, we are all just so passionate about the power of radio. And it was a pleasure to have her tell her story. And more importantly, like I said, a board member for KPFT, we appreciate the volunteers that help make this station run. Like
Absolutely. I've been a lifelong radio lover.
We like that. Well, speaking of lifelong radio lovers and people that are passionate about the medium, is somebody who I can't think of anybody else who has worked for more radio stations at the top and helped to guide them, leadership, manage them, and also create this great content that we all love. I'm talking about the legendary Patrick Fant. He is currently the head of RFC Media, but he also was at one point the general manager for KLOL, the legendary station, The Buzz, KRBE. He's worked for them all, including news stations as well. Pat, welcome to the Houston Hour.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me. I think you guys do a wonderful job at this, Your approach, your knowledge of the history is remarkable, really.
Thank you.
That's good.
Well, like I said, I mean, there's history and there's history makers, and you're certainly one of them. We've had so many of your great colleagues and contemporaries on the show. Doug Harris is one that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
These individuals that when we chat with them, it almost always comes back to Pat Fant. It comes back to somebody who's just really nurtured their careers and who loves radio. And tell us how it all got started from Galveston originally. How did it all get started with your passion and love for radio?
Well, when I was in the 11th grade, I guess, the summer, I'm a Ball High guy, Galveston Ball High. So 11th grade, I started working at the local radio station when I was 16, I think, KILE on the island, and 1400 AM, great little station. And a lot of guys came through there over the years. If you go back and look at the names, it's kind of amazing, all the characters that came out of there.
Tell our listeners what kind of station that is.
It was a top 40 hits, station. And my senior year in high school at Ball High, I was playing records on the radio every night from 10 to midnight. That's just how I thought things were supposed to work.
That's cool.
And so then that summer, I work on so by the time I left to go to Houston, I guess it was 67. And I went up to Houston to go to U of H. I was an English major. So let's go up here and do this. And eventually I got a job at 12:30 a.m. KNUZ.
Legendary station, too.
Another legendary station. I was very fortunate to get to work with Joe Ford and Paul Berlin Larry Vance and Jim Pruitt. This guy named Jim Pruitt worked there at night, but at the time, he had just got back from Vietnam, and his name was Tony Raven, the Tony Raven Night Flight, he said. The Tony Raven Night Flight. And then he'd make the little wing sound. It was just great. Anyway, so we got to be friends. I was friends with all of them. The building was on Caroline at Blodgett, was the K-News KQ building. It was a big old house. Dave Morris, the owner of, I think, Texas Coast Broadcasters, owned both of them. And it was the Kilt and K-News top 40 radio battle of the 60s and early 70s, really. And it gave me a chance to really learn what this is all about and what live radio is for and how what you're supposed to do. And there was so much passion in it and fun and madness. And think about the time. It was the Vietnam War. I was on the air the night we landed on the moon.
Wow.
I was sitting there, I was there for Helter Skelter with what happened at Sharon Tate's house and Manson and that crowd. I was on the air for all of that.
And you got to do breaking news? Would you have to come in?
And I would do breaking news. During the day, I would have a news guy because we had the glass and the news department was across. They don't do that anymore, but the news department was across the glass. And so I got a call one day from the people that ran KTRH. And they said, we noticed that you're doing something interesting at KNUZ at night. I was doing the Flower Power Hour, right? But they called me the Crown Prince. Damn, why did they do that? But it was kind of fun. So, okay, you're going to go on the air tonight. You're going to do this night show with the Flower Power, and you're going to play all this weird new music that's out there. We're going to call you the Crown Prince. I said, really? I'll never get a date again. So they said, this is very interesting, and we at KTRH have discovered in the bottom drawer we have a license for an FM station. They weren't quite that surprised. But they said, we're about to break it from being a simulcast of KTRH. We're about to split programming and start a music station. The kind of music that you're doing over there at night seems like the future. I go, oh boy, is it the future. So they had me to come over for a meeting. We talked. I was 21 by this time. And
give people some perspective about what Houston was like back in the late 60s, because we talked about this in the green room earlier. You've got David Addix's Love Street, Feel Good Light Circus Machine coming online at that time.
The summer of 69.
Yeah.
I mean, the summer of 69
Market Square was all the rage.
Woodstock was on.
Yeah. You had a band.
I was in a band. We played down at, Love Street in different clubs, and we were kind of terrible.
What was the name of your band?
World War III. I was in a few different bands, but I played with World War III for a while, and we were really loud. We weren't that good, but boy, were we loud. That counts for something. So, but anyway, we put this together, and they said, look, we would like you to, at 21 years old, hire a staff, develop the programming, and build a rock station for 101 FM KLOL. And I was a very fortunate young man to have this happen to me. So I had the privilege of meeting John T. Jones there in the Gulf building, in his office on the top floor of the Gulf building. He wanted to meet me, and we talked about it. And
let listeners know who John T. Jones's uncle was.
Yeah, Jesse H. Jones.
The legendary.
Namesake, of course, of my friend Jay Jones here now, and who's a wonderful guy and really was my boss at KLOL for the 13 years I ran it, from 83 to 95. And Jay's just a very smart man. And we saw eye to eye, we hit it off, and I knew I could make this thing make money. Mm-hmm. And we did. I mean, we made a lot of money.
So right place, right time, right
It
minds.
was good for me, good for Jay, good for
Houston.
Good for Houston, really, because we were one of the top FM alternative. It wasn't alternative then. It was called AOR, album-oriented rock, and one of the top stations in the country in major markets like Houston, L.A., San Francisco.
And FM was new at this
Boston,
time.
Chicago.
This is the early times.
Cleveland, yeah. They were a handful, less than 10, really, strong FM rock stations that were going. And you're right, the whole FM phenomenon was fairly new,
Yeah.
And we were drawing tremendous interest and attention to what FM was going to become. So things worked out well. So anyway, that was 1970 when I cracked the mic on August 7th, 1970, in the Rice Hotel, played the first song on KLOL, which you know what that was, right?
What floor were y'all on?
I
Let listeners
don't.
know.
I don't.
We were on 5.
Okay. And KTRH was on 7.
6.
6, okay, just above y'all.
Because we'd go up the stairwell back and forth. They'd send, like the news guy would come up and do some news.
And KTRH, right? Come to the Rice Hotel.
Come to the Rice Hotel.
Or your
keep
favorite.
the resume handy, one or the other. But the first song was I'm Free by The Who, and that was significant because I guess I picked it out because that's where, coming from AM Top 40 radio to now being free enough to play this crazy new stuff that was the Summer of Love.
Yeah. That's super appropriate.
So,
how cool.
Think about the timing, the background for what the country is going through, what the world is going through, the cultural revolution that was everywhere you looked. So I was very fortunate that the staff that joined me in this to help me whitewash this fence, the staff was the most talented group of people ever. We were very fortunate to have them. They were smart, they were innovative, fearless. Guys like Bill Narum. Bill Narum was on the air with us, one of Texas' legendary artists, obviously, now not with us anymore. But Bill was responsible for the look and the beauty of many of the art and designs and things of the Runaway Radio. The original was drawn by Bill Narum, and we developed a following. And the following was not only in Houston, but it was a national reputation for this station and those like it that were revolutionizing everything, including playing the new music that was something you just couldn't escape. It was there. So the idea was that the break with this kind of music on FM and what was still on AM was pretty dramatic. It's a long gulf between those
It's
two.
not your parents' radio station, or even bandwidth.
So I stayed about 3 years, and, things change and all that. And eventually, management, the sales department, the salespeople at the time wanted to go, well, now how do you do this? What's the format? So how do we know how to, for longevity? Good question. Makes sense. The format was kind of simple. It was when one record is over, it's time to put on another record. And behind us is the wall of albums where we sit. We filed them all by the color of the edge. So So you don't put them all in alphabetical order. You just put them by the color of the edge. So the white ones and the green ones, and it was sort of rainbow through there. But the people on the air knew exactly where to turn around, reach up, and grab that album and that song because you've only got 15 seconds left on the record that's playing. So, I'm going to play that next. Where is it? Here. Boom, boom, boom.
And it's not
whack.
a cassette or anything. It's a record. You got to put it on, put the needle, and get everything ready.
You got to
There's
put
time.
it on, put the needle on, get it ready, put it in the exact right place, hit the button, but you know what? You learn to do it in your sleep, really, which I did. So the characters that we had on the air with us, eventually Jim Pruitt joined me at KLOL from KNUZ, and when he came over this time, he was still Tony Raven. That's right, he was still Tony Raven at that time. But so anyway, I left radio in 73 and didn't come back till 83, and I was shooting films. So I was writing, producing, directing films mainly for large corporations. And I was traveling all over the country constantly, really always traveling. So that was hard work.
What made that decision? You decided to get out of the business. Was it just something that happened or just tired of it?
While we were still at KLOL, we were really all started, I'll tell you what it was.
Tell us.
We started getting into video. And KLOL did one of, I can't say the first, because I'm not sure, but we might have beat ABC Network to it. But one of the first live radio TV simulcasts for a music show. So Saturday night, we called it Mother's Midnight Media Mix. Saturday night, Channel 26 and KLOL were linked together. We did it live. And we did 4 or 5 shows from the studios of Channel 26 over on Westheimer.
And this is, what year is this? Give us context.
This is 72. It's about 72.
That
70, maybe 71.
26 was brand new then.
Yeah. I still have the TV guide really at home. I mean, I've got some of the things that people no one has seen this. So there we were. We did the show, and several of them. We had Dr. John was on one of them from New Orleans. Mac Redneck, Dr. John the Night Tripper.
So nobody ever broadcasted Larry Kane from the ABC 13? So they didn't put that on the air anywhere?
No, but
you think they would have. It's
a simulcast with a radio station? Not that I know of.
Okay.
No, maybe that's why I say I really can. But we were certainly one of the first major market FM radio stations to do a weekly live simulcast. And the ABC stations were doing something called In Concert at that time. And they were right on top of us doing sort of the same thing. But it was national. The local people did not do it. It was all national. So, but anyway, so that got us all really interested in video as well. And the idea of music video is what had us pretty worked up.
Well, it was huge in the early
Music
80s.
video
It was
was
everything.
huge, yeah. So we wanted to get deeper into music video. So we did. And we did that show. And then we started doing a lot of other things. So there were, the things changed. And I went off and did that for 10 years. So I traveled around and shot movies for big companies until 1983. And Jay Jones called me and said, we are going to start a TV show for KLOL called 101 Rock Place. And 101 Rock Place is a Saturday night simulcast, and why don't you come over and talk to me, and maybe you could produce it for us and direct it. And so I said, okay. And so we talked, and so I spent 6 months just doing the TV show, 101 Rock Place. It was Channel 20 and KLOL every Saturday night until we do an hour. And it was going really well. It was really fun, and we would showcase all the air personalities and do all this. And so finally, Jay and I worked out something. He made me an offer to be the general manager. So I thanked him, and I said, this is great fun. It's just what I want to do, and I'm ready to come back and take this thing now to the next level. And he gave us the room, gave us the space, the freedom, the understanding, and the intelligence and the background to say, you guys really do have a handle on some intensely creative radio, so let's go for it. And so he gave me all the support necessary. So for 13 years, I ran it. I hired Stevens and Pruitt in, they worked for me for 10 years, so it must have been around 86 86 or 7 or 8, somewhere in there. No, probably 87. And then that lit the fire to go another level up. So we were sort of famous after that.
Oh, yeah.
That was really something.
Let listeners know, remind them, take them down memory lane with some of these personalities that you work closely with, that were larger than life, that had their own following. I mean, this is all way before social media, but if social media was around back then, these are the kind of people that would have 30,000 followers.
Thank goodness it wasn't.
Well,
you know?
I don't know.
I mean, we were social media.
Some of the stuff y'all did, you were social media, you're right.
I would much rather be social media than have to do, but that's just me.
Yeah.
So, well,
some of those on-air personalities.
We were Billboard Station of the Year for rock in 1970. I'm sorry, 1990. And at that time, the lineup that I had for that on the air was Stevens and Pruitt morning, Dana Steele was midday, Moby was my afternoon guy, and Outlaw Radio was at night with Outlaw Dave, and then became Grego. Oh, well, Grego was first, then Outlaw Dave. So that was a watermark of pretty high regard right there when we pulled that off and were recognized for it. And the station had so many high-profile events and promotions. And Doug Harris and I worked very close together. He's the world's greatest marketing and promotion guy. And he and I really, when we were doing the TV show, he started showing up right about the exact same time that I did, and I got him to be my promotion and marketing guy.
Your secret weapon.
Yeah, I mean, he and I worked very closely together for about 10 years at least of that.
So he comes to you with these ideas.
Well, we work together so well. We know each other so well.
Give the listeners a little bit of idea of some of the marketing, the legendary marketing things that y'all did at KLOL, because I'll give you an example. You and I chatted. You actually had a budget, and you had a unique budget because your budget involved what?
Well,
fines.
We weren't shy, you know, and we were fearless, and not all the things that we did were bold and brave and raw and unacceptable, but some were, you know, because the idea was, I said, look, half the people are going to just hate what we do, and I don't care about them. I care about making the other half, the people that love everything we do and everything we say, love us so much that they just can't turn it off, and they're with us 100% of the time, and they're telling their friends, and they're buying stuff from all the people that advertise. So we weren't worried about criticism. We're still not. So we weren't worried about criticism, and so because of that, we, you know, got a little carried away a few times, and we did get fined a couple of times or 3, and I learned to go ahead and budget for it in the annual budget. It's, you know, put some money in here for a fine, because
so FCC fines, no problem.
You know, I mean, you don't go after them and try to get them, but when people are unreasonable, they just won't listen. They just won't understand. And the stuff that we're doing on the air, they go, well, you're saying bad stuff about these people. Well, no, we're not. It's comedy. It's bull crap, really, and it's fun.
Wasn't there a 20-foot brassiere on a billboard?
Well, sure. That was the Change Your Life sweepstakes. We had much better taste than to call it giving away a boob job. We'd never do such a thing. So we called it the Change Your Life sweepstakes, and we said, we're going to give you this new life. Really, it was $5,000. Yeah. And you can
do it.
You can do whatever you want with
it.
So to sort of help to promote that, we did have a giant 40-foot bra built on an aluminum frame. So it was very lightweight. Skaters could carry it, and did, down Main Street for the InterFirst Bank Symphony Fun Run. And the Pace bra was our bra in front of it. So that all the skaters holding it up, and they were skating along and doing their leading of the parade. And the day or night before or something, we had it hanging from one of the billboards on Katy Freeway. So the billboard people got upset and fined us for, you know, an illegal sign or something. Well, excuse me. You know, we put a bra on a billboard. It's just not the worst thing you can do. So we lived through that. And then the boys would say things in the morning, you know, that got us fined by the FCC a couple of times, and they'd say, well, that's explicit. Oh, it's explicit. Well, today, there's nothing you can't say, really, and they do.
Yeah. And how about giveaways besides that? Like
well,
cars?
Sure. 2 or 3 times, I think was always in the springtime, we would give away 5 Corvettes. not to one person, but to 5 different people. So we give away 5 Corvettes, and that would drive people just crazy, because if you hear the sound of the Corvette starting on the air, you're the 101st caller, you win the car. So everybody's pretty worked up about that. And then the rock and roll auction went on for 10 years. We had people like Joe Walsh in town for those things. And then the guy that on the Letterman show, the band director,
Paul Schaefer.
Paul Schaefer was in. Joan Jett. We had a lot of people. So the rock stars would come in for that. And, we raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for various charities with the rock and roll auction. And it was a show. It was a promotion for the radio station, but it also did a lot of good for a lot of people. And it put rock radio to work for the community in a real meaningful way, not just, BS on a report, but it really did some good things. And then I think we had skydivers spell out 101 jumping out of a plane. They would all link together and they were falling and spelled out 101. To commemorate that, we staged a single-engine plane crash into the top of a building over by Hobby Airport. So we got in trouble for that.
Well, what was that? You literally crashed a plane?
No, it was just fun.
What'd you do?
We just had it mounted on the roof that night, and people went out the next morning and go, oh my God, there's this plane that's halfway coming out of this building, and people were calling and what in the paper,
the fire
the
departments.
newspaper was out and the fire department's out and go, oh my God, there's a plane. That's just for us. We're just attention nuts. I mean, we just crave attention.
And I can't think of anybody else. TV stations don't do that kind of promotion or marketing. Neither do magazines. No one does that kind of stuff. But in radio, you can get away with that, or it's expected in radio.
That's what I miss about radio now. That there are too damn many lawyers, and so you just
they're all owned by corporations.
Well, we were owned by corporations, but
I think for our listeners who don't know, and of course our listeners are from all over, and definitely not necessarily having grown up here, but like in the 70s, oh my gosh, I had this kind of radio by Panasonic called a Tootaloop. It was in the shape of a donut. You could open it to change the station, and I had it on my bike, and I listened to the radio all day long.
Oh, you're the one. Oh, good.
But like people did that,
They sure did.
Or I think of that, what is that movie with Ron Howard from the 50s with Wolfman Jack and American Graffiti?
Heidi, radio was important.
It was everything.
Radio was, people had a favorite radio station.
Oh, yeah.
For a reason.
For sure. And I remember like being home sick from school one time, and it gave me a great opportunity because I got to call in and I won the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Heart Club band T-shirt because everybody else was at school.
So you'll never forget it.
I'll never forget that. But it was such a huge part of our life and such a huge part of communities, and throw in the fact that you could win a Corvette. Like, what? You know?
And then let's talk about Transylvania Mania.
Oh, yes.
So Halloween, here comes Halloween. We go to Orange Crush, the soda pop. So why don't you finance us going to Vlad the Impaler's castle in Romania, which we did, took a bunch of listeners, spent the night in Dracula's castle.
What?
In Transylvania, Romania, brought to you by Orange Crush. And so we did that a couple of years. Those kind of things, that takes imagination. That takes Pat and Doug Harris talking together over lunch, go, you know what we could do? And coming up with an idea and making it work. And when you have the idea at lunch, you go back to the radio station, you put it together, and the promos are on the air that night. Well, you didn't wait for approval. You didn't have to talk to corporate. You just go on the air with it. And that kind of spontaneity and the immediacy of it is what drives the passion that the listeners pick up on. They feel it, then they start feeding it back to you.
And a lot of us are sad about our studios over on Lovett being demolished, but give listeners a little bit of view of what Radio Row is like on Lovett Boulevard and the stations that were there and just the energy that was there.
Well, the beginnings of KLOL were in the Rice Hotel, which couldn't be more appropriate. My goodness. Mm-hmm. There we were in the Rice Hotel. I was there 70 to 73, and then I think they moved to Lovett Boulevard in 79 or 80 or something, maybe. Somewhere around there. Lovett Boulevard was the home of KILT AM for decades, I think. And sure enough, I don't know how this story happened, but the land was selected next door to KILT, where they built the building for KLOL and KTRH. And I think today it's condos or something. The ghosts in there I'd love to meet. But there was KLOL, KTRH, KILT, AM, and FM next door to each other. That's 4 pretty big operations. And right in the next block is KPFT. Mm-hmm. So there's 90.1. We all just kind of grew up with that. We'd all meet at Griff's down on the corner, year after year. And everybody knew everybody. Now there's no radio stations on Lovett Boulevard. So, how did that happen? So I got a call in 95 at KLOL from Roy Disney. And he wanted me to leave and go across town to start a new radio station at 107.5. So I thought, this is interesting. What can we do here? That's when the music changed again. You see the pattern here. The music drove it in 1969, and then alternative drove it in 1995. So why don't you come over, put the alternative station on the air that we know you want to do, and you can't at KLOL because it's really rooted in classic rock. So I did it, and I left and went across town and started The Buzz and put it on in April of 95. And that was
Nirvana, the Kurt Cobain explosion.
I had the music behind me. So I wouldn't be so foolish as to do it without that. But with the music behind me, I knew we would be successful. And we wound up beating KLOL in the ratings in 1 year. And then I felt bad. I felt good. I didn't know what to feel. But we did huge promotions at The Buzz. And by this time, see, Jones family did not own KLOL or KTRH anymore. They had sold about 2.5 years earlier. So I was, the last 2.5 years I was running KLOL was under a different company. I think it was Evergreen Media, some guys out of Dallas. So I went and did The Buzz, and we did really well. We started, did the first couple of Buzz Fests that I knew would be successful, and they were. And we had just all the graphics and remember, visuals is such a huge part of radio, and people miss that today. When you thought of KLOL, you'd see the head or the runaway radio or whatever. When you thought of The Buzz, that logo look would be there, and we knew how to pay that off so much better than they do now, I guess.
Well, promotions help. Promotions have always been merchandise and billboards and just remember, like brand that logo.
Well, sure. In radio, you've got to give people a visual to hold on to because it's all sound. So, give them something to hold on to. On 610 at Richmond, we had a Buzz billboard that had the name of the song changing as we're playing the next record.
What a great idea.
Innovative,
It's like, well, duh, why would you not? You're driving by and now playing, and it goes Kurt Cobain, Nirvana, something. And
you immediately change the station. You listen to it. You go to
I love
Buzz.
that,
Was it a big deal when you stopped playing records?
Well, records had a feel to them that was different. We went from records to carts, playing music off of tape cartridges and putting them in. That was the worst part. And it should have stuck with records. And then now you don't really run a radio control board anymore as much as you, run your show with a mouse. A mouse on a laptop. It's like, why? That's not right. Yeah. Why would we want to do that? So,
and before we go, give us your social media handles or your website. How can people get a hold of you, Pat, if they want to reach out to you and just reminisce or just want to learn more about what you do?
Well, I'm at rfcmedia.com, rfcmedia.com. A partner, Cruz, deserves tons of credit because he's a brilliant programmer and just a really good guy. And we started RFC together 12 years ago.
Well, thank you again for being on the Houston Hour with Mr. McKinney and Heidi Vaughn. You're an absolute legend. You've got your wealth of Houston history and knowledge and radio knowledge.